Okay. So what do you think? What were your, what are your impressions? What are your preconceived notions? What do you think of the video? Don't care, obviously.
Well, overall, it emphasizes the power that a person has.
Yeah.
Access.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's become especially obvious in the last 3 years too. What else? Anything else? Nothing? So how many people, just by a raise of hands, how many people have used Twitter before? Okay. And you've used it personally, is my assumption?
Well, have Twitter and use Twitter. Two different things. I have Twitter, but I didn't do that. Follow people.
Okay. Okay. So I still think Twitter is, well, I mean, I still love Twitter. I think Twitter, if you understand it and use it and get in the habit of using it, I think it can be a very powerful tool. I think it can be a powerful tool for a couple of reasons. One is to stay up to date, to remain informed on things. What's still cool about Twitter is that you kind of tailor your feed by who you follow, on what you want to see and engage, and whom you want to engage with. So the other thing is that Twitter is a public forum. Okay, so unlike Facebook, so when we talk about Facebook next week, Twitter is instead of saying you are a friend, you have a follower, right? And that institutes a public platform. There's no reciprocal acceptance of following somebody on Twitter. So once you're on Twitter and your account's public, which is the way it should be, it doesn't make sense to privatize it, then anybody who wants to has the ability to follow you, and you have the ability to follow anybody else or organization or company or brand or whatever it may be, not just individuals necessarily. On Facebook, it's a reciprocal relationship, right? I send a friend request and that person then has to do what? Accept the friend request, right? So there's this reciprocal relationship between people on Facebook. That reciprocal relationship does not exist on Twitter, meaning if I choose to follow somebody on Twitter, that doesn't automatically mean they come and follow me. There's no relationship there in a sense that you would see like on Facebook, where on Facebook, if you friend somebody, you're going to see their posts, they're going to see your posts, you're going to see their posts, likes, whatnot, all that kind of stuff, unless you kind of put them in the back of the bus on Facebook and unfollow them. Okay, which again we'll talk about next week. I have 3 accounts on Twitter. So these are the accounts that you want to follow. You definitely want to follow IT107. I will follow you back on IT107 so that I can see what you're tweeting and all that kind of stuff. So once I go through, once everybody's on board, I'll go through the people who have followed this account. Usually a bunch of students, it will be, and I will follow you back on this account. I will not automatically follow you back on my Tony at MATC account until I start seeing if you're a worthy follow on Twitter, right? Or if you continue to using Twitter or whatnot. So, but you can follow me on Tony at MATC on Twitter, but definitely want to follow IT107. You can also follow Larry Dominy if you choose to, although he's not instructing IT107 this semester, but he still tweets.
It's at Tony.
Yeah, it's at IT1, the word 07, right here. At IT107. Okay. It's also on the syllabus or how to contact me and all that kind of stuff. So Twitter, like I said, is a public platform to engage, follow news. I think Twitter is a much more, a lot of people use Twitter as not to participate, but to, what's the word am I looking for? What's the tech word I'm looking for? Just to observe, right? They don't participate, but they use Twitter for news and to stay in the know. I think that it's great for that. I mean, again, the video showed the Boston bombing. I was home that day when that happened, and I did an experiment. I had CNN on in the living room. I was in my den or office or whatever you want to call it, and I was following everything on social media, primarily Twitter. And what you slowly, surely found out was that the stuff that was being reported on Twitter you would come 2 to 3 hours ahead of time, especially initially when everything was going down, before you heard it on CNN. And really what eventually you started hearing, what you started feeling like, was basically CNN was just reporting eventually what was going on Twitter. After maybe they would have to confirm or whatnot. Was there some crappy stuff on Twitter that was not correct? Of course there was. But anytime you're dealing with any kind of real-time situation, right, that's going to happen. I mean, that's happened with journalists, that's happened with news organizations. So anytime you're following something in real time, especially a crisis, there's probably going to be some misinformation that you come across in a Twitter timeline. The other thing about Twitter is I've asked you to follow at least 100 accounts. So you want to keep, you want to keep working that up to follow at least 100 accounts. And again, initially I'm asking you to keep it professional, follow it within your passion for IT, whether that be coding or development or networking or support or technology in general or whatnot. But you need to get that up to 100 accounts. And why do you need to get it up to 100 accounts? Because you're not going to find value in Twitter until you do. Okay? Because Twitter's kind of like a fire hose. And what ends up happening if you follow too minimal accounts is that things don't continue to bubble up. All right? Things have to continue to bubble up. And so, like, if you follow, the more accounts you follow, 100, 200, 300, 400, what ends up happening is Twitter becomes more valuable because things that you may miss, right, will eventually resurface again in a Twitter feed. Okay? And that's why I think it's so important to follow multiple accounts, to follow as many accounts, at least 100 for this class, if not more, and Twitter becomes more valuable. If you only follow 20 accounts on Twitter, Twitter is, I would definitely see why Twitter would not be of no value. Now, unless you were famous and you were using it as a broadcast mechanism, right? Then okay. But for the way we're going to be using it to engage and to be lifelong learner and to engage in your profession, you got to follow at least 100 accounts. So it won't become, I showed you last week how, just do a Google search, look at the people who I'm following, follow each other, there should be really no excuse why you can't get that up to 100. Because the reality of Twitter is it's not something that you're going to be on all the time, right? It's going to be something that you're checking throughout the day, maybe at numerous times on the phone, on a tablet. You're waiting at a bus stop, you pull out your phone. Again, we're spending time on the web-based version, but Twitter is really powerful when you put it on your mobile devices, right? Because it is this kind of short burst thing where you can look at. So again, what I do is I'm not pulling out a game when I'm waiting in a dentist office or whatever. I'm pulling out Twitter and I'm checking the timeline or engaging in something like that or listening to a book or whatnot. But my point is that it's not that I mean, if I wanted to, I would. I'm just not a big mobile gamer. But the point here is that Twitter's amenable to these kind of short bursts, look, timeline through, find something that maybe interests you, right? Or that you think would be interesting, that would improve or help you understand something or whatever, and you read it. Am I reading every single thing in my timeline? No, right? that would be impossible. Okay. But I am looking at times for things that that interest me. And I found a whole ton of great stuff on how I become a better user, right? And a better IT person and stay more in the know of what's going on in education, technology, social media, and whatnot, right? Here, Ike is saying hello to us this semester because he knows we're starting class. He probably gets some people following him. I have to tell him he's got to get blogging again. So you want to follow, okay? It's important. And if you've used Twitter before and you haven't followed enough accounts, I think you'd see a difference in the what Twitter allows you to do, okay? Now, the Twitter interface, and again, we start with the web interface. You're going to see I'm logged into IT 107. This is the class account, basically. So if you want to experiment with hashtags or with mentions or whatnot, this is the account that you can use for the classroom initially. So let's just kind of look at the page. So IT 107, if I go to the my actual account page, my home page, right? I have 14,000 tweets on IT 107. I'm following, right, 690 accounts, okay? Mostly students, okay, primarily from classes. I have 846 followers. These are people who are following this account, all right? What I see in my timeline when I click at home is the content of what? Where do these come from? The people who I follow, right? So this is the content that my followers are creating and tweeting, and that's what I see. If you follow IT 107, what you will see is the stuff that I'm tweeting in your feed, okay? So these are the tweets that have come from IT 107, okay, for following IT 107. And if I ever want to see the tweets of an account, I can go directly to that account and see those tweets. So when I'm on my home field here, this is my timeline of content that I'm seeing from people or accounts that I followed, all right? So I'm following 690, 846 people are following me, all right? There's on the home page, there's a trends, and what you're going to see is some of them are words and some of them have the pound sign ahead of them. When it has a pound sign ahead of them, that is called a what? Hashtag, okay? And all a hashtag is it's a word designated around a topic that typically is either done organically by whatever the event is driving it and it's kind of settled upon, or it's done ahead of time for an event or TV show or whatnot, right? So if you watch TV or watch the Super Bowl or you watch a sporting event or you watch a Fox show, right? They're going to have a hashtag around there. What they want you to do is they want you to tweet, right, around that hashtag. And what you can then do is you can see the conversation around that hashtag. So for example, and this is where it really, this is partially where Twitter even becomes more powerful. So I don't know, it's National Pizza Day today, is it? It must be. I didn't know it was. Now I do. So when I click on National Pizza Day as a hashtag, what I'm going to see is all of the tweets that are being thrown out there, not by people just who I follow or follow me, but tweets out there for the rest of the world, right? Around National Pizza Day, right? So we should order pizza, I guess, or you should go home and order pizza. All right. And a lot of goofiness, obviously, around National Pizza Day. Okay. There also, if you don't know, a big snowstorm hitting the East Coast today. And so if I click on snowstorm here, I can start seeing how the snow is. If I have friends out on the East Coast or flying, I can see that New York, Boston are going to get hit today with a snowstorm, right? And I can follow that. So these are hashtags that Twitter defines as trending. I mean, there's a lot of action around that. And I can change these tailored trends are around me, around my account. I can also change my trends to be by location. You can also do this on the mobile app. So if I want to see what's trending in Milwaukee, I can switch that over to Milwaukee. And I can see that some things are basically the same. And there's probably not much going on in Milwaukee at this point where something would be trending around something going on in Milwaukee. Although some of these are new. Derek Williams, not sure. I don't know. And if I want to go to a different location, I can, or I can just go back to my tailored trends and I can see that. Okay. I can also search, and I can search by hashtag if I want, or I can search just by event or something. So when I went to bed last night, I oftentimes listen to the radio, and I was on Twitter, and there's this old Knicks player, Charles Oakley. He had a big fight, got with the fight with the owner, and there's video of him punching the guards and all this kind of stuff. So again, if I wanted to learn more about what happened last night, I could search for the Knicks, and I would be able to see what has happened with Charles Oakley and the big fight he got into at the Knicks game last night. Okay. So again, you can search Twitter. It doesn't even necessarily have to be a hashtag. The other thing about hashtags before I leave them is they're not unique. Okay. Nobody owns a hashtag. Okay. So like if I run a conference and I want to have a back channel discussion amongst Twitter users, I would just pick a hashtag, right? It wouldn't matter. It could be any hashtag. It could be anything I whatever I wanted to. Is it possible that that hashtag was used for something else previously or is being used, right? So like, for example, my wife's an art teacher at Cedarburg High School. She uses, principal and stuff uses the hashtag CHS Pride, right? Well, that's Cedarburg High School Pride. Well, other places, there's other places at high schools that have probably used it. It's not, they don't own that hashtag. Nobody owns the hashtag. The hashtag, so when you search for hashtags or you hear about hashtags, it's typically either used around a recent event or like with the Boston bombing, or hashtag began organically around the crisis, right? And that's what typically ends up happening, okay? I have moments, and moments, again, are Twitter's attempt at basically putting together a set of tweets around a particular moment. So if I go to something like entertainment, so here's that Bob Costas passes hosting torch to Mike Tirico. And if I click on that, I'm able to see the series of tweets. I mean, it's almost like they're like organized, editorialized tweets around the subject. So these have been typically editorialized by an individual, where if I just searched for that, I would just get the raw data, okay? You can actually create your own moment now. So you can go ahead and set a cover, look for tweets and editorialize around something going on. So think of it as not searching like a raw search, but something that is handmade, right? Where I take in, I look at, so like if there was a crisis going on, what I could do is I could start my own moment and I could kind of bring in an editorial eye to what I'm posting in that moment. And that happens a lot. So journalists might do it. You might follow like a moment if the New York Times is editorializing it or whatnot. Then I have notifications, okay? And notifications are being told of something that's occurring on Twitter, all right? So I've had a bunch of people follow me in the last minute here, and I can see that as activity. I can see that somebody liked one of my tweets 24 hours ago. I can see somebody retweeted my tweet on February 7th. So these are all actions that are occurring on my feed, within my account, somebody doing something, following me. These can all be set up on what you get notified for, and we'll come back to that. But these are my my notifications. All right. I'm going to come back to mentions. Then the fourth tabs are my messages. Okay. So this is direct messaging. So if you want to message me, like I said, you can direct message me. So if I click on my Tony at MATC account, I can use this as a messenger, and I would get that message then. Might hear my phone beep. My watch just clicked. I got a mention on my Tony at MATC account. Messages are private, okay? They're not public. So they're private messages, just like you would be sending something in Facebook Messenger or whatnot. They're not private. You can also create a public, I mean, most people probably don't do this anymore, but when you create a new tweet, you can put DM in front of it, and that's a direct message, okay? So when Anthony Weiner got in trouble and still is in trouble, he's kind of a nut job. Yeah, serial nut job. What he probably did is he wanted to DM that picture, and he probably sent that. Then what he did is he probably either forgot to put the DM in, or forgot, or misunderstood what he was doing, and the picture went out to all the people who are following him. As soon as the picture goes out, especially for somebody like that, a public figure, screenshots are made immediately, right? And it lives in perpetuity, okay? Even though he may go back and delete it 2 minutes later, it's out there, okay? And so I think when you're direct messaging, and in mobile apps, it's probably easier. You always want to direct message from the direct messaging GUI or on your mobile app from there, okay? So let's think about tweeting. So when I click on this box, I have the ability to tweet, and you'll notice I can add a photo or video. I can add a animated GIF. I can add a poll, and I can add my location, okay? You'll notice that it says I have 140 characters. So let's just kind of do the simple thing. Let's say I'm reading an article. And I read it, and I want to share it. I would go ahead and copy the URL. I would put in the URL. What you'll notice is that it goes down a set of characters, but not the full amount of characters that it would go down if I was actually counting every character from URL. And then I put in, even read it, but maybe I should put something more generic. Wow. And so I could go ahead and put that link in there, put the wow in there, my commentary. And then if I wanted to, I can do a mention, okay? Or I can perform a hashtag. So I know it was something about Apple. So let's just say I put in an Apple hashtag, right? And I want to call it to Tony at MATC's attention. And when I put in a @ with the person's handle at the end, what that is a mention. It mentions the person. You can think of it as being a shout out. So it's going to trigger something on a mobile app. It's going to give me a notification in some way, shape, or form, and it's going to call my attention to that tweet. So if I tweet it, I would go ahead and tweet it. And what will end up happening is you hear my watch click. I got a notification on there. And if I was at home on my account, I would see, I'm not logged in here, I would see that I got a mention. And in the mention, I would go to Twitter and I would go to notifications and I go to mentions and I would see it as being mentioned. So For example, here, Shadow of El Sol mentioned IT 107. Okay.
When you put that hyperlink in, how much did it take away from your?
It took less than what it says because it shortens the link.
So is there a set number for hyperlinks that it takes away from you?
No, until you run out of characters.
So you got
Yeah.
short hyperlink.
But it went down from 140 to 117. That was more than 27, 37, 23 characters, right?
So I guess what I'm trying to find out is what the pictures are going to take away. So let's say you throw a picture in, is that taking away?
Yeah, it takes away
It all takes
something,
away
but not
something,
all.
But nothing is set.
Yes,
Okay.
right. And it differs depending on how it gets shortened and whatnot.
That's kind of my question.
Yeah. So you would always see the count here, 140. And if I were to add a picture, and I don't know if there's one on this. Yeah. Yeah, I don't have a picture anywhere. But if I were to add a picture, it would take away a certain amount of the characters. And you would just see what that was. But like adding location doesn't do anything, none of that stuff. So you just see that. And all the clients, all the mobile clients, everything they tell you when you're running out of space. Okay. So the other thing here is we'll go back to what, oops. So we see these mentions here, right? And it's that shout out. So if I go back and I try to find Ike's message, which I'm not sure why I wasn't. Well, that's because he didn't mention me actually. Not much coming out of here, is there? Where was it? Maybe he took it down. I don't know. So the other thing that I can do is I can actually, so that's basically sending a tweet. I mean, it's fairly easy. I mean, you're limited by, the things you can do and by the amount of characters. But then I can also go to another tweet and I can do other things. So I can retweet it, right? And if I want to, I can add my own comment to it. Now, this is something that's changed in Twitter over the last couple of months. Your commenting used to count towards the 140 characters of the tweet. It doesn't do that anymore. So you have a full another 140 characters to comment to that tweet. So if I want to say, cannot wait to Joshua. Joshua's the next student. Right? I can tweet that reply back to him, and he will get the reply on a notification. So this is what I'm replying to. Cannot wait. Awesome show. And he sees the reply. Okay. I can also reply directly to the tweet. And when I reply to it, his name comes first. Now, replying back and forth to each other individually, this is different than a mention, okay? This will not show up in other people's timeline who are following either me or Josh. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, it goes back and forth. So you can imagine, like, if I was having the conversation back and forth with somebody replying, if somebody was following me, wouldn't want to see, or they wouldn't want to see this back and forth just popping up on their timeline. It wouldn't make any sense. And so that's when you put their handle first plus any commentary, that's a reply. Okay. It's not going to show up. And then I can also like a tweet, okay? And liking a tweet is basically, you look at it two different ways. One is if I go back to my home account, I have what I've liked on my account, okay? So I can click on likes and I can see what I've liked, okay? So some people like use it for a list. I think there's better ways to do that, to keep like, there's a better workflow to like save a tweet into Pocket or somewhere else. What I think I use like for is kind of the same thing that Facebook uses it for, which is I go ahead and I am acknowledging I read that tweet, right? Because that person then gets a notification that you liked that tweet without having to reply or anything. So I read it and I got something out of it. When I go back here, this is kind of what I was looking for. When I go back here are my tweets and replies, right? So this is where I'm seeing where people are replying to me. So here's where if somebody did reply to me, I would see it here, right, under my own account. And, that's really the web-based usability of Twitter. We're going to talk later on about different applications that you can use. I definitely would get Twitter on your phone. I go back and forth. I've used the Twitter stock app, and I still use the Twitter stock app. But on my iPhone, I also use Tweetbot and Twitterrific, which are two, purchase them. On Android, there's no good third-party Android Twitter application. At least I've never found one. So on Android, I would just use the default Twitter app, for Twitter. And you can do all the same things, except now you have a camera in your hand that you can post pictures to. You have, mobile where you're able to look at mobilely and see stuff. So those are kind of the basic concepts, though. It's not that difficult to understand and use in a sense. And like you'll notice, for the most part, my professional account, I'm using to read and disseminate information that I think would be important to the people who are following me. And I've built my stuff on basically educational, social media, technology, right? And stuff that I find of value. Everything that I typically post to Twitter, I've read in some way, shape, or form. So it's kind of my editorialized content that I think is important relative. If you scroll through here, there's a lot about net neutrality and stuff like that. My IT 107 account, or the IT 107 account, is a little bit different because it's the classroom account. And so it's used for you guys to experiment, to mention, to do things. And I use it to follow the students to see what your activity's like on Twitter. Okay. Then lastly, we go into the settings. Something that, everybody should know about and look into and whatnot. So here's my IT 107. I have my email address, which would be your professional email address. Time, I'm not going to change it because I should, but Larry's on it. I don't know what. My content is United States. Tweet media, if you want to be informed before showing media that may be sensitive, you have to remember Twitter is not censored like Facebook is, okay? So it can be much more of the wild, wild west regarding content that you may or may not want to see. So if you remember when that lady got shot on live TV, the newscaster, that was a video on Twitter and it was showing up on people's timelines and playing without their consent. They're all freaking out. This is where you would turn that on or off. Mark media tweet is containing material that may be sensitive. Again, on a professional account, I'm not sure why you'd be checking that. Here's video audio autoplay, which what I was just talking about. And then whether or not you want your timeline to be show me first or be kind of catered and use algorithms like Facebook. I used to be against this, but I think Twitter, it doesn't seem to me that it's done anything that detrimental to my chronological timeline. So I have that set, and that's fine. Security and privacy. I'm not going to show you two-factor authentication on Twitter because I'm using this, and we don't set two-factor authentication on Twitter because we're sharing the account. But these you want to check, okay? You want to verify login requests. You want to add a phone. And basically what will happen is when you're logging in from someplace unfamiliar, it'll text you a code to be able to log in. It's called two-factor authentication. As an IT professional, two-factor authentication, when it's available to you, should be enabled on every single account you have. Okay? There's nothing more embarrassing than being an IT professional and getting what? Getting hacked, right? So these should be checked. You add the phone, require personal information to reset my password. I have all of these checked on my personal accounts, okay? I always use as much security. Is it a pain in the butt sometimes? Yes. But that's what security is. I mean, you're giving up some convenience for more security. Also here, again, this is the IT 107 account. I do not allow anyone to tag me in photos on my personal accounts. Okay. So I do not allow anybody to tag me on Twitter. I just don't, because first of all, it's public, and I just don't feel the need to be tagged in a professional account on Twitter. Okay. So I have that checked on my personal accounts. Tweet privacy. This doesn't make sense to me because Twitter is a public platform. Adding my location to my tweets. I'm in favor of adding location. It doesn't say if you tweeted from here, you're at MATC. It says you're from Milwaukee. All right. But like a lot of times people like tweeting their dinners. I joined Blue Apron a month or 2 months ago, and I've been tweeting out some of my dinners that we've made. And I think it's important, like if you were at a restaurant and you want to tweet out your food, and food porn's always popular, right? Everybody likes to eat. And when you're at a restaurant, so adding your location, I think, is important, but a lot of people don't want to do it. If you uncheck this, you can add location manually, not just to every tweet. Let other users find me by email. Let others find me by phone. On my personal accounts, I have this both checked, but on the class account, only one account. Again, tailor tweets based on my recent website visits. I don't have a problem with that. Tailor ads. I don't have a problem with that. Allow anyone to add me to their team. Again, on my personal accounts, I do not allow anyone to add me to their team. Okay. On my personal accounts, I do have it set to receive direct messages from anyone. I don't really get that much spam. I actually don't get spam at all. But I want somebody, if they want to be able to contact me if need be. So again, I have that checked on my personal accounts. Password. Again, I use unique password using a password manager. Cards and shipping, again, are for monetizing. Order history is for monetizing. Here's where you can get your mobile app, right? And then here are my notifications. So basically, I have every possible notification that I can get through email. When my tweet's retweeted, when somebody likes my tweet, it just goes into a folder in Gmail for all my Twitter stuff. I like notifications. My notifications here, I use a quality filter for this account, but on my other accounts, I like seeing, I think I do have quality filter, but I don't have only people you follow on notifications. If you're living on the web, you can have your web notifications turned on where your browser will notify you. Okay, if you have it open on the web. You can find friends through searching your contacts either on Gmail or Outlook. You can mute accounts, okay? And you can mute accounts for a certain period of time. So for example, what I've seen is I follow a guy out and used to work for Google, and he lives out in San Francisco. And he's a big Michigan fan. And so like otherwise he's tweeting about tech and stuff like that. And then like on Saturdays during college football, it's just these whole bunch of tweets about Michigan football. So like he'll always say at the beginning, if you want to mute me for the next 6 hours, go ahead if you don't want to hear about Michigan football. Again, Twitter's a fire hose to me, so I don't think I rarely use that feature. You can mute words now. So one of the things that Twitter gets bashed on is this idea of trolling. And what's trolling? Well, Dwight, go ahead, speak up. Yeah, like you're constantly harassing somebody based on whatever they're saying or tweets, and Twitter's known for that. It can get pretty abusive if you're a star, if you're a politician, if you're a public figure. But again, like even that documentary, what it showed you is that it can kind of even get out of control in different ways with cyberbullying. So I guess you could set up words that you don't want to say. This would scare me though, because you never know when a word is I guess you could put swear words in here, but something like that but again, I've never used that. You can also block accounts. Most of my accounts here are blocked or spam accounts. So I've never I've never blocked somebody who I think is real. But again, I could see where if you were being harassed or bullied, that blocking would be important. Remember, blocking is your nuclear option. So once you block somebody, you don't exist on Twitter for them, and they don't exist on Twitter for you. Okay? So they're just gone. It'll be the same way it would be on Facebook. Different apps that you have connected or that I've authorized for Twitter. So when you can sign into the app using Twitter, these are the apps that I've used at IT107. Ike had that widget up on his web page. This is where you would go ahead and create your Twitter widget if you wanted to. And then your Twitter data that you could take with you if you're deleting your account. And then accessibility. Okay. So to me, the big things on there is to figure out what works for you, to make sure you have two-factor authentication enabled, and go from there. Then the last thing is your blurb, which a lot of people did decent starting blurbs to put in your profile, and then a background image, right? And then eventually a picture, a headshot of your professional image. I'm not that concerned about that right now. Going forward, that's going to be part of your persona, but we really haven't talked about it. But eventually, the sooner you get rid of the egg, the sooner you're going to be a Twitter user, right? Most people don't consider you a real Twitter user if you're tweeting from the egg, okay? So even if you have something temporary, again, it can probably be something that's a little bit less formal or fun, but I think when eventually you develop your persona and you get in the job market, you're going to want a headshot. You're going to want something that demonstrates who you are. What you use as a banner is up to you. This is a drone shot of our cottage. The lake that our cottage on is up north. So I just put it up there in anticipation of summer. And that's Twitter kind of in a nutshell. Questions?
Yes, what is that under where you have to don't allow people to tag them pictures? Is that?
Yeah, if you go into settings.
See, I'm under settings.
Yep. And security and privacy. Right. It's the first one under photo tagging. Do not allow anyone to tag me in photos. Oh, the one last thing too, you can create lists. So you can put accounts if you want to. You can create different lists. We used to create lists of the classes. Now I just throw everybody in from the semester. But you could go ahead and create a list and add accounts to a certain list. So if you wanted to do accounts for like sports, tech, tech figures, whoever it is, you could. Again, I don't use Twitter that way. I like Twitter being this kind of fire hose where I'm looking at a feed and I'm seeing what is being put out there in my feed. So, but some people love lists. They kind of organizing your Twitter, where then you'd be able to click on the lists and you'd be able to see just tweets from that particular list. So if I click on this list, these are just tweets from those past students. Questions? Any questions? See, Joshua liked the tweet, so I get a notification that he hearted the tweet. So it's kind of an acknowledgement that he saw me when I replied back to him. Again, I ask you to give it a chance. Okay. Part of this class is you don't have any homework assignment this week. You have no formal assignment. There's nothing you have to do this week, right? But what do I expect you to do? Yeah, keep following. You pick up Twitter once a day, sit down with it for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, read something, find somebody to follow, read an article, mention me, tweet something, retweet something. Just try to develop a habit of just trying to use Twitter. That's all I'm asking. It's like it's not. I'm not asking you to write an essay. I'm just asking you to try using it. Try just to familiarize it with it. I hate to say this, but if a crisis happens, you would really see the value of Twitter. It's almost like Twitter becomes essential in crisis moments, right? And it's a. I don't know. Dick Costello is not the CEO of Twitter anymore. Jack Dorsey is. He's the founder. He also runs Square. Twitter has gone up and down since it doesn't have the same growth numbers as Facebook. So, when all the earnings reports have come out in the last couple of weeks, Facebook has like 1.86 billion people on it. Twitter's hovering still around 360, 70, 80 million, right? A big difference. But remember, the platform is used differently. So again, even though you may not tweet, I still think it's an awesome platform for lifelong learning, for staying in the know, for staying up on things that you're important and passionate about. Initially, I wanted to revolve around your professional life and your pursuit of a career in IT, but eventually you can interject some of yourself in there, right? So if you go and look at all the people accounts that I'm following, is it all just tech people? If you go look at the 1,900 people I'm following, no. There's sports writers for the Packers. I follow Packers, sports teams. I follow some celebrities, whatnot, right? But the majority of it is still around my passion for IT, education, social media, and whatnot. And that's what I usually choose to tweet. I don't do as much tweeting. It's not my forum to tweet a lot of original stuff. It's usually I'm using it as a editorial of the stuff that I'm consuming and that I think is relevant to the field. So I think if somebody followed my Twitter feed and they looked at it, they would find some value if they were interested in the same things that I'm interested in, right? And keeping up on the same things that I'm interested in. Now, who knows what happens? I'm driving home today. I see a big car wreck, and now I'm on Twitter, and I'm taking pictures, whatnot. If you want to get picked up nationally or by state, by somebody, just tweet weather stuff. So and the weather hashtag in Wisconsin is hashtag WIWX, okay? Wisconsin weather. So if you're stuck, I was up north, and there was a huge hailstorm, biggest hailstorm I've ever been in or part of. And I Vined it. Vine is now actually gone too. They got rid of Vine, but I Vined it and I posted it. And it was a hailstone that was just up north. It wasn't all over the state. And like 2 seconds later, the Weather Channel texted me back or messaged me back and said, can we use this on our website and can we use it on the TV? You know, and I'm like, sure. And then somebody from Channel 12 said the same thing. So if you're at somewhere and you're stuck in some horrendous weather, which it doesn't look like we're going to have for the next couple of weeks, it was big. And it was a ton. It was so intense.
Accumulated?
Yes, yeah, exactly. And it wasn't, you know, usually I've seen pebbles and things. These are bigger, and it covered the whole thing. Yeah. So, like, if you saw that meteor, right? Where did I see all those media things? Meteor? Did you guys see the meteor that hit? Well, that was on that where I found out about that was on Twitter, right? About the meteor that went over Milwaukee, and they had a bunch of postings on different websites of all the footage that captured the Milwaukee meteor, right? And so again, that's where you kind of even find more value in Twitter is when something happens, and how fast information gets disseminated now, right? And I mean, if you've watched, I just like the other thing that's changed with me is I don't watch the news. I don't know, maybe millennials don't watch the news anyways, or, you know, like when I was younger, I would read the paper to stay up on things. Well, now I get all my feed from Twitter, Facebook, online. Now, do I live in a bubble? I mean, we can argue this, we can do all that stuff. Is there negative effects of some of this stuff? Yes, I believe there is. But as somebody who follows the stuff that across the board of reputable people and sites, I feel like I'm not living in the bubble in a sense.
How many different social media do you consume like that? Are you like that on Facebook? Are you like that?
Well, Facebook and Twitter are my main.
Just the two.
Yeah, those are the two.
I don't see how I'm gonna make it happen. I guess I gotta wrap.
Well, I mean, the thing is that you become. I mean, again, part of it's my job. Okay, so I mean, when I tell you some of this stuff, I'm a little bit crazy, right? But like I'm trying to say though is like I will pick up my phone at times and just run through a Twitter feed, and if I find something, I save it. Oftentimes on Facebook, if I'm reading something, I use the save it later button, right? So I save it or I stick it in Pocket, and I may not come back to it for like a week or something when I have time, where I come back to it and read it, or it just gets forgotten. I started off on Google Reader, which was an RSS feed reader, and I'll tell you that story later on. But I've just got really I like staying in the know. I like knowing things. I'm interested in a lot of this stuff, and so. I mean, that's how my spare time is. I don't really, you know, and a mobile device has just made it so easy because I can do it almost anywhere, right?
I tend to get sidetracked by people like the one you told the phone. That's an interesting person, and I want to kind of go.
Yeah, and that's fine. That's fine initially. I mean, again, like I said, I'm not saying that there's any right way or wrong way. What I'm just asking you to do in this semester is just try it. Just try to work it into your daily routine in some way, shape, or form, and try to engage and try to share stuff and just try. I think you'll be surprised. I mean, once you start getting engagement with somebody, and that won't come right away, but once you start getting somebody engaging or somebody retweeting or somebody saying, "Hey, oh, that's really cool," or "Wow, I didn't know that," or "This is awesome," or "This backs this," I mean, you start getting a sense of that I'm engaging with people and that people are reading it. Now, again. I'm not crazy enough to know that everything I put out there is being read. That's not the way it is. But, you know, I think there is important stuff. Like there was an article that I got some feedback on that talked about I'm always interested in how workplaces are changing, right? And so one of the big things that's going on right now is like salaried employees are going away, which is problematic it brings up a whole bunch of different issues. But then the other big thing is mobility of workforce. So the ability to work at home. I'm a huge advocate for many, many different reasons to allow people to work at home. I mean, global warming, global climate change, commuting, waste of time. I mean, I'll spend an hour and a half in a car today, right? When I could be doing something much more enlightening than driving, right? So, and the article was about basically, if you don't trust somebody to work at home, you shouldn't hire them, right? You know, you shouldn't hire them in the first place, which I totally agree with, right? Because if you can't trust, if your employee is only working because you're under their thumb or they're under your thumb, it doesn't make any sense to me.
To be able to find out anyway, because they're not producing the work.
Right,
That's the-
right. Right. And I just don't think in this day and age that's being a professional. Right. I want to work with professionals who want to get their job done. So I got a lot of feedback and I had some engagement on that. It was fun. It was fun hearing other people's thoughts and ideas and what they thought of it. And I know a lot of people disagree with it and disagree with me, but it's fun. It's fun having that discussion. You know, I mean, that's the problem. If you think about what's going on in society today is, well, other than the fact that we have alternate facts, other than that we can't agree on facts, is that, you know, people just aren't willing to discuss things anymore. I mean, they're just lines in the sand are written. Now, some of those lines are deserved so, I think, but there's just not enough engagement. The argument that social media has made us less engaged, I think, is a valid point to a certain extent, but it's also not a valid point because if you know how to use it correctly, you can actually be more engaged.
But you're
It's
less
just-
engaged with the people right around you.
Right. Right. Well, and I think it's important to get a more worldly view than just live in your microcosm of Milwaukee, right? I mean, if you go and listen to, I was listening, so this was just an eye opener for me. International Clash Day was Tuesday, and I was listening to a Seattle radio station on my tune-in radio on the way home, and how the ads, the whole culture of all of that is so different than what's going on in Milwaukee. It's unbelievable. It was really easily made clear to me how different even living in Milwaukee is
Example,
compared to the experience of somebody living in Seattle.
what was a common ad or common whatever you did?
Well, I mean, just it was just a much more progressive, you know. I mean, one of the ads was for cannabis,
Oh,
you know, for a cannabis co-op. One of the other one was for an adult women-owned toy store.
oh, going a different direction.
But what my point is that the
You don't see that.
you don't, that's not in Milwaukee. That you wouldn't even think of hearing something like that in Milwaukee.
People would probably start calling to get that off.
Right. And so what I'm saying is that the people, and those are our fellow countrymen, those people's experiences are dramatically different than what we're experiencing, you
I'm
know?
surprised it's on media as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know what that story says. I just think though that's what technology has allowed for us. It's allowed for us to open up, to experience more, not to experience less. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And some people reject it. Like they reject Twitter, they reject these things because they're fearful of the rest of the world that's out there, in a sense.
You can reach a broader population, more information.
Well, and I just think gain other people's insight that you normally wouldn't gain. Right. Right.
But what's happening is those people that aren't talking to their same three friends anymore, I guess is what our.
That's true. That's true. I mean, we'll talk more about some of that stuff, but
Everybody at your home sit there looking at a gadget.
not. I mean, yes, here and there, but I mean, we also. I mean,
Well, hopefully you still interact.
yeah. I mean,
A lot of times people don't interact.
yeah, but I mean, you've seen that picture, right, where they show the buses in the 1930s, and everybody's got their head buried in a.
A newspaper.
Yeah. So in a way, some of that stuff hasn't changed. We think it has, but it really hasn't.